Sawadee krap. Hola and hello everyone. Welcome to the Product Uncensored show with your host Colin Pell. That is me. This is the show where we talk about all things product with product people focusing on Southeast Asia. At least that's what we'll try to do most of the time. If you've just found this show, do check out our other episodes and content which are available on YouTube and also all major podcasting platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow. I don't get paid for this show, so this show is fueled by good vibes, and those likes and subscribes will definitely help me go a long way. So, back to today's show. It is episode 9. We're already at 9. And yes, yet again, it is special. You know why? Because today we have our first guest from Thailand. He is probably the definition of the global citizen. He's originally from Brazil, has studied in Denmark, has worked in 4 different countries. He's currently the head of product and regional PMO for Tencent Thailand. He is none other than Renato Silva. Welcome to the show, Renato.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you so much. Big pleasure to be here. Terima kasih.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, man, that is so cool. I love it. Yeah. So usually Renato always looks very sharp, but I think the MCO has dealt him a blow in terms of having to grow his beard long and his hair long as well.
That is true. I haven't been to the barber shop in 3 months, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's the first time I'm finally going to get my haircut. So it will see me slightly different next week.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, I'm lucky because I just wear a cap. So
right.
Yes. So good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for agreeing. And I know that you have a lot of things to do as with many people. So I really appreciate you agreeing to be on the show. So we're gonna start, but before we jump into all the heavy questions, I have one very curious question for you. Because in your LinkedIn page, it actually says you speak 6 languages. Is that right?
No, it doesn't sound too correct, I would say. I haven't actually read my LinkedIn page in a while, so it could be a mistake. Okay. But I do speak a few languages. I do speak Portuguese. That's my mother tongue. I was born in Brazil. So I do speak that. I do speak English, obviously, as you guys can see that. So it's testimony to this. I do speak Danish, or at least I used to, because I lived a year in Denmark. I went to school in Denmark, and we can talk a little bit about that later on. My Danish is very, very rusty at the moment. I still have contact with my host family, love them. It's really, really nice to talk to them every now and then, but it's a little bit rusty. I do speak Spanish, so that makes 4. And then I scratch a little bit on Thai. I can speak like the survival kit, as I say it. Can get my directions, can get my food. At one point,
food and toilet, right? These 2 are probably the most important, right?
Oh yeah, sure. And directions, like go straight, turn right, turn left. I've been in Thailand for a while, so I've been able to catch a few things here and there. Nice. And because of my Danish, and also I used to work for an Austrian company for a very long time, so I ended up studying German, and I could speak some German, but now I would say my German is pretty much out of the equation. I can still understand quite a bit. Whenever I go to Germany, I can, ask for things in German and sort of get things coming back. So probably out of the 6 languages there, now, counting 6 languages, Thai and German are the ones that I have the least proficiency.
But that's still 6, man. That's still 6. That is still utterly insane.
I realize you're right, yeah.
Wow.
But I don't speak 6, let's put it this way, right? I'm not fluent in 6 languages. I would say probably 3 languages, and then the 4th, a little bit.
Well, I guess one could say that in a life and death situation, you speak 6 languages.
Absolutely. If 6 languages is what it takes to, save myself, fine, I'll do it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this is why I said, Renato is really the definition of a global citizen. I I think I've yet to see a guest on this show that has such a colorful CV in terms of the number of places you've not just studied but worked and the language that you speak. That is very, very
Really?
impressive. Yeah,
I hope you don't make me cry before the end of the show.
Oh, okay. So now, sorry, another very, very important question before we start. You're Brazilian, right? How
Yeah.
much do you love football?
Oh man, football is life in Brazil, right? But you know, I'm a product guy, so I'm very critical of everything, right? And over the years, I not disappointed myself with football, but I have a very clear reason why I like football or why I would watch a football game. And I haven't done that in years. And the reason for that is I love beautiful games, right? I love the World Cup because you see so many beautiful games. And the World Cup in Brazil, I was in Brazil at that time. It started with Holland beating Spain with that amazing goal.
Mm-hmm.
It was just beautiful, and I get goosebumps talking about that, right? So the reason why I nowadays watch football or get interested in football is to see or watch a beautiful game. And that's the least thing we get in most games, right? If you look into most games that happen all over the world, it's very competitive, it's very rough, it's very fast, and people trying to score or do their best. But the beautiful game is sort of fading away a little bit. So with that, my big passion has also in the past couple of years kind of switched it away a little bit to football.
That is true. That is true.
But I still love it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the beautiful game. It is the beautiful game. And for you listeners who are from America, this is the real football, not that stuff you guys play. I don't know what that is, but yeah, that's not football. So
That's like powered up rugby.
That's true. That's true. Powered up rugby. I like that. And even then, they're probably like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," So
Right. I definitely don't. I think rugby is really for top men and very courageous.
Yeah, that's
very
true.
Strong. I really, take my hat off for those guys. They really do something special.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we go into how you got into product management, tell us a little bit more about yourself, especially when you were growing up, because you are native Brazilian, but you also ended up doing high school in Denmark. How did that happen?
Oh, that's a long story. You want the short version or the long version?
Let's do the short. Let's do the short.
Okay, so the short version is at one point in my life, I was 16 years old, and my mom was pushing me to look for things outside of Brazil and scholarship. I ended up doing an exchange student program in Denmark where a family volunteered to host me. And I lived within that family for a year, and I went to local Danish school, and that's essentially how it all started.
Okay, so how long did you end up being in Denmark?
I ended up being 1 year there, and that essentially changed my life afterwards, right? So I grew up in Brazil in a city that is considered pretty much like third tier city in Brazil.
Which city is that?
It's called Londrina.
Londrina. Okay, I don't know any
named
football
out of
teams
London
from there.
because they thought the weather was similar to London somehow. It's today a city with about 600,000 inhabitants. It's not too small, not too big.
Mm-hmm.
It's big enough for teenagers to have fun. Teenagers and kids to have fun. So that was good. And then I was going to Denmark and I was picturing, wow, it's Europe, it's going to be exciting and amazing. And I'm going to live in a super nice city like Copenhagen and all the culture and everything. And then I ended up living at a farm 7 kilometers away from a 3,000 inhabitants village that was like 3 hours away from Copenhagen. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was amazingly cold. I had never seen snow before in my life. And I was desperate. I was simply desperate at that point. I was like, no, I can't believe I came here, and I couldn't even speak English at that time. So I learned it all in Denmark. And so communication was tough, and it was rainy and it was cold. So life was very, very tough. And I think that was one of the greatest points in my life, like one of those dividers, where I started to learn a lot about myself. I started to learn a lot about patience, right? I had to be patient. There was no internet back then. There was nothing. It was back in 1995. And that tells people a little bit how old I am. And then that spiraled into several other amazing things that the school was in Denmark. I couldn't believe that those guys had this kind of school, and it was public and it was free, and you had all these amazing subjects that you could choose to study, and one of them was music. I was always very related to music. I loved music from an early age. And music in school was just amazing. They had several studios, and I started playing in bands. And then I went to find out the library that the city had, and the library was amazing. And the second floor was all music related. So it was books, and it was all CDs and cassette tapes that you could just borrow for a week without any cost. So this boiled to a lot of what I actually am today, right? So I had a lot of free time, and I used it the best way possible. And that put me in sort of a bubble that I learned to live in with my own language. Whenever I was somewhere that I didn't understand what people were talking about, it put me in a bubble of learning and constant discovery of new things that I always loved. So that was great, and that paved the way for the years to come and what happened.
Right. Okay. So, wow, that looks like you really, ended up enjoying your time in Denmark from initially, you don't speak the language, it's snow and everything. But that's fantastic. So let's then sort of fast forward a little bit, and let's talk about how you ended up in product management. So I think, because I'm looking at your experience, you actually ended up doing quite some dabbling into the music scene. I think you also did some a company that dealt with podcasting as well. So, and this was like 2005, before podcasting was even sexy. So you were already doing it, way back then. And so from there, how did you, suddenly go to product management? Because it was more marketing roles, right, at that time.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you the long story. For this part, you can need this afterwards if needed. So after I came back from Denmark, the only thing I knew was I want to live outside of again. I want to have that experience again, but I don't want to study. I want to work, and I want to see how the rest of the world is. So I ended up studying international business. And with that, I ended up working for an Austrian logistics company. There was an international company that was arriving in the city where I was studying. So I ended up working for them. And for me, it was sort of a dream come true. Okay, great. Here's my opportunity to go outside of work. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up going to work in Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, in Holland. And I spent quite some time in Austria as well. And at one point, they gave me a call and said, look, we have a problem in Thailand. And we talked already with two potential candidates, and both of them asked me to talk to you. So you want to go there? And I said, wow, great. Yeah, sure. That's the furthest away I can get from Brazil, working for this company. I've never been to Thailand. I don't know what much is there. I have a very good friend, which I met in Denmark. We studied together. We're like super close friends and still are here many years later. I said, great, when can I go? So that's how I ended up coming to Thailand, working for that company. And I worked for them in Thailand for 5 years. Came here for 6 months contract and ended up staying for 5 years. It became my second home. I think there are many similarities between Thailand and Brazil. It's an amazing country. I love the culture. I love the beaches in the south of Thailand. I still have to go to the beaches in Malaysia, which I know are super special as well, but I still have to make my way there. So after working for them for 5 years, I decided that logistics was not for me anymore. And I wanted to find something new. And what is that new? I don't know. Let's find out, right? So in that find out, I took a sabbatical year to travel around Asia a little more and to really figure out what I'm going to do. So I did a couple of workshops, courses to try experience different things. One of them was like short video production. Another one was DJing. Another one was, crafts and photography and a whole bunch of stuff to figure out what I was going to do. And I went back to my emails that I didn't have time to read. And one of the emails was from a good friend of mine that today lives in Thailand as well. And he was the guy who actually hired me for that old company. And that email was from 6 months before, and was like, Renato, I think you might like this. And it was podcast. So it was back in 2005 that I got in touch with podcast the first time. And that for me was like, wow, that's the evolution or revolution of TV and radio as we know it. Yeah. And I want to be part of it, right? And I really, really want to be part of it. So I started consuming a lot of podcasts back then. The biggest entry point was iTunes Store. It was amazing to see all this content that was being generated. So I was eager to actually do that myself and to get into this kind of thing. So fast forward a little bit, I went back to Brazil at the end of that sabbatical year, or in the middle of the sabbatical year. I went back to Brazil. That was the original plan. I wanted to be closer to my family. My grandparents were getting old. I was out of Brazil for a long time. So that was a decision I had made back then. And a good friend of mine had an audio production company. He was a musician. He was producing music for loads of different things, from movies to advertising and loads of stuff. And he said, Renato, with all your international experience, I think you would be a great partner for my audio production company. And then I look at him, well, I can do that only if our main product is podcast. So that's what propelled me into product management when I didn't even know about it. I didn't even know anything about that, right?
So you were essentially like doing the product management role without the title being product management.
Without the title, and I don't even know if at that time there was anyone called product manager in tech, or I just don't know what was going on, or I didn't know what was going on. I was a complete pirate, navigating those waters and trying to at the same time be part of a revolution, make a living, and all of that. So that's how it basically started.
And what was your title in that company?
So I then became one of the co-founders of that company. It was a slightly different company before. I became one of the co-founders. Okay. And what we tried to do was to go to potential clients, mainly businesses and advertising agencies. They could potentially understand what that was, because it was way too new for everyone to even understand what a podcast was, right? Today, podcasts you have even on YouTube. The word is very easy to understand. People are understanding, but at that time it was subscription-based, because internet speeds were nowhere near what they are today. So streaming was totally out of the question, and that's why podcast was so interesting back then, right? Because you could subscribe, and without any effort, you have all of the files in the background, and you can listen, or you can watch, or you can do this, and you can do that. So I was trying to sell this to brands back in the day, and they were like, what the hell are you talking about? You know? So I started then going further into their projects to understand what their needs were, what their objectives were, and how we could insert podcasts. And by doing that, I ended up working at a digital agency, and that's how I started learning a lot more about the whole digital economy, about tech, and about social media. And then I became a specialist in social media management, and then things took a life of its own. So that podcast company was my first startup. Then another one that I ended up doing was selling online tickets, which was something very, very new in Brazil as well. So all of these experiences gave me like a strong understanding of how tech worked. I ended up being invited as a teacher for an MBA program, also for professional school in Brazil, and I got involved in this environment and learned a great deal. So it was quite an interesting ride.
Okay, so the obvious question now that we're going to jump into is, how do you go from there to end up being in Thailand again?
Right. That's a good question. So because I had lived in Thailand for very long, I always took Thailand as my second home. I always loved it. When I left, for Brazil. I always knew I was going to come back one day, either traveling or, my dream was actually to find a way to earn a living, spending 6 months in Thailand, 6 months in Brazil every year. It never worked out. I tried a couple of different businesses, but didn't work out. So I always had that in the back of my mind. And after that first stint in Thailand, when I went back to Brazil, I spent 9 years in Brazil. And within the 9 years, I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And she had some sort of connection with Thailand as well. She's Brazilian. And she had a friend who was selling Thai clothes or things from Thailand in Brazil, and she was selling it when she was a teenager. So she always had like Thailand in the back of her mind. So when we decided to get married, honeymoon could be nowhere else but Thailand, right? And I always told her, one day we're going to live in Thailand. She said, no. I just want to have enough money so that we can spend holidays in Thailand twice a year, right? That was her dream.
Okay.
And I said, yeah, okay, fine. So we came for honeymoon through KL. We flew through KL. And then 1 week into the honeymoon, we were spending a month in Thailand. 1 week into it, she looks at me and she said, okay, I got it. Let's move.
Wow.
So that's how it started. And since I was on honeymoon holiday in Thailand, I obviously met a couple of friends when I was in Bangkok. And one of them was a great friend of mine. He's a very influential guy in the scene, or at least in advertising tech in Thailand. And he's like, Renato, are you sure you want to move back? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why? No, because many people tell me they want to move to Thailand, and when I finally help them, they give up. I said, no, you know me. I've been here before.
This is my second home.
This is my second home. That's exactly. If I'm telling you this, then obviously I want to do it. And he said, okay, send me your CV when you're back to Brazil, and then let's start that. And he was the guy who introduced me to the people who are now Tencent, right? My boss at Tencent.
Yeah. At that time, it was what, Thai Sanuk Online. That's the company.
Yes, exactly. It was called Sanuk Online. So Tencent had acquired Sanuk Online already for a couple of years when I arrived. Sanuk Online has been one of the main internet portals in Thai language. It's very influential. It's got a pretty massive audience in Sanuk Online company that I actually joined.
Okay. So
that's pretty much how it happened.
Right. So did you join at the organization, was it Sanuk Thai Sanuk Online, or was it had it already been acquired by Tencent at that time?
It had been acquired by Tencent at that time, but it was still called Sanuk Online. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But what about okay, I'll come back to that in a bit, because I had a question around that. But I just wanted to cover this part. So when you joined as a product manager already, a senior product manager, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So that was when you moved together with your new wife and you settled down in Thailand.
Exactly. So if you want, I can get a little bit into how that happened too.
Let's leave that and see whether we come back to that, because I think we've got very interesting questions about the whole move and everything. But what I wanted to ask was, when you joined, Tencent had already acquired. Was the management very? Did they leave sort of Thai Sanuk Online to operate on its own, or did they come in with a change of management and things like that?
Well, as far as I know, because this story precedes my time for a couple of years, right?
Okay.
So when Tencent acquired, I don't know exactly at what point in time, there was a change in the management, and our current CEO was the one who Tencent hired to take care of the business. And he's Thai. He spent quite a few years in the U.S. He did all his studies in the U.S. Super interesting guy, super important guy in the growth of Tencent Thailand, and he is currently my boss. Yeah.
Right, and of course, when you joined, you actually were part of the Joox music streaming app, right? So you never ran away too far away from music.
No, and this was amazing for me because I have a very, very strong connection with my family. My granddad was a musician. My great granddad was a maestro. I have a long history, and my generation of the family is the one that doesn't really work with music except me now. So so my friend introduced me to them, and then we started doing some interviews through Skype, and it was in the middle of the night in Brazil normally. And things started cooling down a bit. And I talking to my friend, and he's like, Renato, I think if you show up here, knowing you and knowing them, there could be some chemistry, there could be some connection. So one day I just tell them, hey, I'm flying in, let's just have a chat. And said, yeah, why not? Great. So I lined up a couple of interviews in Thailand, in Singapore to make the trip worth it. It's a long trip. So everything worked out fine. And when I was in the interview process, I was interviewing for a role that was not on Joox because Joox hadn't been launched and it was top secret. So they were telling me it was something else, completely different. And at one point, we're having a final conversation before I jump on a plane, I guess, something like that. And we were at a bar with the guy who hired me. And he's like, Renato, okay, we want to make you an offer. Here is the details, but I can only tell you more about the product if you sign an NDA. But I don't have anything here. I said, okay, let's grab the napkin, and let's do an NDA here right now. And that's how we did it. And when he told me it was Joox and what Joox was, I almost cried, right? Because it was like, wow, no, I can't believe it. It's like, it's a dream come true to be able to work for a music product. I had been a DJ for quite a while. I had played in bands. And, I grew up listening to a lot of music, so I was just thrilled.
Wow.
And very thankful.
Would you have taken the job if it wasn't related to Joox at that time? If, let's say, they told you, we've got an offer for you, and it was going to be something else, let's say in advertising space or something like that, would you have still taken the job?
Well, very likely, yes, because I think we had a very good chemistry. I think it worked out well for both sides. We had a good understanding of what I was capable of bringing into the team and, the challenges they were having and what they were looking for. So I don't think I would say no just because it wasn't you, right? I think it would have out. Yeah.
So music was the nice to have. It wasn't the must have.
Yeah, it was an amazing to have. I'm thankful for forever. Yeah.
Okay. How big was the product team when you joined in Tencent?
Well, there was no product team because I essentially was hired to build that product team, that initial product team. And it's funny because Tencent Thailand today, or at that time, Sanook Online, was the largest operation of Tencent outside of China. So we have always had around 250, 300 people working here at our office. And at that time, it wasn't much different, maybe a little less because Joox was not yet around. But the way that Tencent in China had planned for the Joox operation in Southeast Asia was basically to have local content and marketing teams, but not product, right? So these two guys who hired me, our current CEO and our head of entertainment business today, they sort of were a little bit of rebel guys saying, no, we need a product team in Thailand to be able to localize the product properly and be able to run things around and so on. And I think this was an amazing decision, and it paid off very, very well because we changed the business model for Joox in Thailand in a way that you don't find in Malaysia, in a way that you don't find in Hong Kong, in a way that you don't find in other countries. And we're now replicating the same sort of business model into Myanmar and in Indonesia. And this was extremely successful. And we were only able to do that because these guys had that strategy. And we had then a product team that was able to make the cases, that was able to plan how things were going to look like, people to fight for it and actually essentially have.
Right. So how big's the team now? When you joined, you were a team of one. And since that time, how big is the team that you've built up?
Well, I'm now on my third team, essentially. Not all the teams were fully product. So at the beginning, I think the first team I had, we were some 20 people, and probably half of that in product, another half content, and we were doing a lot of operations. The second team had around roughly the same amount of people, but more people in product. and we were doing also video operations. So video came under my responsibility. Video is a big part of Joox now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that moved away as well, and I started focusing more on product for our future growth, and not only on the app itself, but also Thailand. We inherited the web platform for Joox, so we out of Thailand manage the web for all the countries. So the role started moving around a little bit, and my current team has about 14 people now.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So
we're solely focused on product.
Yeah, so you actually have the very I want to say rare, but I don't think that's the right word. Yeah, but basically you have not just the privilege of doing the the tech product side, but you're essentially handling the product full on, right? Because you're doing the actual video production, as you said, and some of the other roles as well, which is something that, again, I think it's not that common for at least a modern product manager, because
Right.
And I would lump myself in that part as well, because we usually look at the either the web platform or the mobile platform, and of course the backends that come with it, but we're not necessarily always able to go straight into the content production side, which it sounds like you do, and that's quite amazing as well.
Yeah, I don't do anymore. That's something that I did for a couple of years. Now content team is on their own. Video team is also on their own. But I certainly had my hands on it in the early days. It was amazing. For me, it was, again, a dream come true, right? It's a blank check that, great, okay, guys, any ideas on how we're going to do it? No? Okay, so here it is, right? And that's what we have to do. So let's figure it out if users are going to like it or not. And then we started researching quite a bit. And at the end, it was amazing. It was an amazing ride, and I'm very thankful for have had that opportunity.
Yeah, and that ride continues; it goes on, right? So
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So, as a Brazilian who has experience working, by that time you've worked in Venezuela, you've worked in Colombia, I think you said, Ecuador. So you've had experience working in quite a few countries by that time, and then you moved to Thailand. What were the biggest changes that you felt when you came to work for Tencent in terms of the role?
Honestly, I don't think there are that many changes, because each company is different, right? And companies are made of people, and those people actually make the culture, they make the environment, they make everything. I think one thing I learned over my experiences, either studying or working abroad, is the respect of everyone's culture, right? Everyone's thinking and the way that they see the world is not necessarily the same way that I see the world, right? So being in that position of listening before acting, paying attention to the details, being respectful, and I think probably that's something that helped me to navigate my waters around. Of course, I still have that hot-blooded Brazilian Latin kind of attitude sometimes, right? Which is not that great, and I've learned how to sort of control it a little bit. But I don't see much differences, because companies and countries they're all made of people, and people are all different. So you gotta be able to navigate the waters wherever you go.
But what about, so one of the things, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because although I live in the country neighboring Thailand, I've not lived there for as long as you have. But the Thai people in general are very famous for being extremely polite, right? The language is so soft, they always seem to be, this very, very polite in that sense. Yeah. And so the assumption that comes with that is also, they may not, and this is, I think, similar across many Asian cultures as well, that they may not open up as easily, especially in the workplace. Did you run into that when you've been working in Thailand, and how do you go about trying to adapt to that? Because you're obviously trying to build a team, and technically you're not not local in that sense. So yeah, how did you sort of try to counter that?
Sure. I think you're spot on. People are super polite. They will rarely say something to upset you or do something to upset you, right?
Yeah.
So I think the key point is really um, trying to make people as comfortable as possible and understand that by speaking whatever they think, and if that is different than what you think, or if that is even wrong, it's never a problem, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of trying to create that safe environment for people to speak up. But saying is one thing, reality is completely different.
Yeah.
So I learned to take an extra effort to give everybody a voice, but not only give them the voice, but pull things out of them. Like, okay, your body language is telling me something different. But of course, I will never say that, but I will try to, hey, but
Tease it
are
out.
you sure? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a different opinion. This might be wrong. And I think by doing that, I also learned myself on how to do more of this, right? Or how to question even my own ideas. Like, are you sure it's right? And if it is not, how can I find it out, right? And I expose this a lot to people also to show them, look, I'm not sure what I'm saying, if
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is right or not, but let's go about and try to figure that out, right? How can we try to prove it? Is there any experiment that we can build to do that? Can we go and talk to a couple of users? Even if we don't have users to talk to, okay, let's talk to our internal users here, but people very different from us that are not dealing with the same kind of issues or not dealing with the same product. Or let's go down to the 7-Eleven and talk to people there and just ask around. So I started somehow. I tried to portray that I don't know everything. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
the owner of the truth, and if I don't know everything, then you should not know everything either, right? So it's okay to speak up and let's try to find it all together.
Yeah, that wow, that is, yeah, that's very encouraging because I think even in I think when I was speaking to Sharon, she was based in Hong Kong, and we were talking about the same things, similar things as well, like how do you get people to open up, and I guess the big barrier, especially if you're in product, is that if you don't find a way to speak what you believe or what at least what the intention is, right? Maybe not the truth, but at least an opinion. The problem is that's going to be a super big handicap for you in product. And it sounds like you've managed to unlock that, in the people in Thailand, in Tencent.
Well, it's easier said than done,
Of
right?
course.
It's at least what I try to do and what I encourage my people all the time to speak up. And it's
Right.
beautiful to see how some people have changed from not speaking at all to speaking up very loudly and actually achieving some very interesting results by doing that.
Wow.
So that's great.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Congratulations about that, because that's usually, the really great part about how you want to be respectful of a particular culture in a particular country, but at the same time, like I said, we still kind of have to do that. It's part of our role, and so for you to be able to do that without being offensive to the culture, that's great.
Yeah, sure.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, but speaking of culture, right? So then I want to sort of go in the same vein of questions. So how do you then deal with Tencent? Because obviously Tencent is, I mean, you're in Thailand, but it's owned by a Chinese company. And of course, the typical stereotype about Chinese companies, and I mean no disrespect to Tencent or any other company, is that, they're usually very sure of what they want, very direct, very brash, even at the top level. And it's basically always top down. How do you, as a product leader, sort of deal with that?
You're right. It's a daily challenge, right? And suddenly they have this rebel guy from Brazil fighting up, and then they're like, "What the hell? Who are you?" So yes, I've had I've had my share of battles, and it's a daily challenge. Of course, things changed quite a bit when we were able to prove in Thailand that by being different, we were actually getting very good results, right? So results speak for themselves.
Mhm.
Um, our results in terms of DAU numbers, in terms of revenue, they were all very positive and very different from the other countries. And sometimes even the team used to question me, hey, Renato, why are you guys, getting this and the other thing is not? And then I would ask them back, yeah, why? Why do you think so?
Why don't you tell me?
But I think over the years, we then started understanding that we can benefit from each other, right? And that's always been my approach. I know the challenges that the teams in China have, and I try to put myself as a strategic partner to them. Like, I can definitely help you with this issue that you're having, but you have to open up, right? You have to want me to help. You have to loop me in. You have to do a bunch of things, but I definitely understand the challenge to go through. And because of the numbers that we ended up getting in Thailand, they were quite positive. And we had this knowledge and experience from the Sanuk side, which was essentially a web portal. Then we inherited Joox Web, that was primarily built in China first, and then I was assigned to take care of that for all the countries. So then I started building another team for that. And we essentially we had a new product and a new tech team that take care of that website, and that's now 100% controlled by us. So we have a lot of freedom to work with it in a way that we don't have so much freedom to work with the app. So we balanced things out. We coordinate a few things or quite a lot of things with the team in China, but at the same time, we also have our own product to take care of.
Okay. Nice. I like that. And again, still going down the same line as well, because again, you spend 5 years there. You've probably picked up certain words and phrases and things like that. Was language ever a barrier for you working in Thailand with your current team, or with any of your teams?
No. It was never really a barrier. Even for some people within the organization that don't really speak English, most people do, but some people don't. Then I put an additional effort to make myself understood and to have communication, and of course the few words that I can speak, I will definitely use that up. But I think there was always an understanding. Is this an issue, a problem? I would say yes, but a small one, right?
Okay.
I still was able to do a lot of things. Maybe if I would speak the language, some things would be faster.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Thailand is a country where they get a lot of international exposure. So a lot of people, especially in the urban centers, especially in Bangkok, especially working for tech, then most people really do speak English, and it's quite a bit to go about.
So there was never a time where you needed to have like a translator present in that sense?
No.
Well, okay.
It's more the case when I go to China.
Okay. Yeah, because I was talking to some friends. Got someone who's based in Korea as well, and he was saying that where he works, because he's not Korean but he's there. Well, actually, he was the first guest on the show. They actually have translators as well, and it makes you gotta put in like extra effort, because now you're actually dealing with the risk of things getting lost in translation, miscommunication. But it doesn't sound like you had issues to that extent.
No.
Okay.
And of course, then once I start building my own team, I'll make sure that everyone coming in speaks a good level of English, that we can have a good understanding. Depending on the position nowadays, if we find someone that has all the skills, that can do everything that we actually are looking for, and can't speak English, I'll definitely evaluate, because maybe this person doesn't need to report to me directly. Maybe this person doesn't need to interact with me on a regular basis. I wouldn't have a problem.
Okay, very nice.
I would prefer that this person do,
yep,
or does, right? But I would opt for the skill set for actually getting the thing done.
Great. So your actual title now is actually head of product and regional PMO, right? Which is when did this promotion happen? Is that a promotion, by the way?
No. It was a change in the structures. It wasn't really a promotion. The scope of work increased a little bit more but I had always been involved in regional projects. I had always been involved, going to China and Hong Kong and getting a lot of things happen for not only Thailand but some of the other countries as well. And then I was handed over the responsibility to push for some projects regionally on a formal basis. And myself and my team, we have been working, thinking now not only just for Thailand, but also thinking about the other operations, the other countries, projects that we do here for Thailand, and we also look for the other countries as well. There are some regional projects that have been decided upon that we want to release across all the countries, and my team is doing sort of tracking of those and managing those across different.
Okay, so that means is it fair to say that the PMO function has always existed? It wasn't something that just got recently established?
No, I think recently it became slightly bigger and more official, because before we were just essentially looking for Thailand, doing things for Thailand, except for the web. The web product was something that we were always doing for all regions. But when you're talking operationally about campaigns and about strategic features or objectives that we have on a regional basis, then my team started getting more involved with those since last year.
Okay. So here's right. So then the question always comes to, and this is where I love to talk to people like you, because in the modern agile world, in the modern product management world, project management is sometimes almost a dirty word, right? Because it's always, hey, don't concentrate on the time, it's the value, it's the outcome, not the output, and things like that. So you'll be the perfect person to ask this question. How do you balance that line? Because even project managers ask this question, right? Like, if I'm a project manager, how do I work with product managers? And traditional companies tended to have project managers, not product managers, or rather they were product marketing managers. And the more modern product management role has usually co-opted that project management role, and you're in a company that has both. So I think you'll be very illuminating for listeners and viewers to understand a bit more about this.
Sure. I think project management needs to be in everybody's blood, right? There is nothing today that we do in modern companies that, you have to understand how it works and you have to be able to manage. The way that I set up my latest team was in a way that the product managers could focus on certain key areas that we need, essentially 4 key areas. And then I have a project that we're moving from project manager to project delivery manager, making sure that we're delivering everything that needs to be delivered on time and within the scope that was designed. And so the idea is the product managers take care of the products, and the project manager makes sure that whatever the product managers have designed, have validated, have put into production is actually going to get delivered within the time that's needed. And impediments that are arising from the different teams, then this project delivery manager is working to remove those impediments or raise things up to the product managers and so on. Because in a perfect world, we would only work with things that have been fully validated through product discovery, right? But that doesn't happen always. And a lot of times the opposite, right? So how do you then keep focused on the right things and looking into the right product? Because the projects are running and there are multiple moving parts at the same time. So if product managers, at least in the reality that we have here at Tencent Thailand, if product managers would also have to project manage delivery of things, they would just get lost in translation and our velocity would be compromised for sure.
Yeah, but it does sound like the PMO office over there that you have is a little bit more modern in the sense that they seem to have even functionalities of a Scrum Masters somewhat, right? Looking into impediments.
Yes, in some sense, yes. But I would say we're still working very traditionally. We're transitioning to more modern product management practices. and I'm someone who's pushing a lot for that. But we're still a long way to go. I think we still have a lot of optimizations to do. So it's basically flying the airplane while you're still building, right? And we've been
fixing the engine while you're driving also.
Essentially, that's pretty much what we were doing. Yeah.
And then how do you deal with, like you were saying just now, the product manager is in charge of, validating things, trying to get the discovery things done together with the, the product design folks. But we also know that in the modern incarnation of the product manager role, there are things that you find out not so early, but sometimes midway or sometimes even late into what was planned. And so how does that impact the project manager's role when, let's say, they maybe it's an example I can give, and maybe you can counter it with, a better example in real life, because this is totally made up in my head. One example I'm thinking about is, like, let's say we've talked to customers, we've gone out and we say, hey, I think this is what they want and we can go out with this. And so the idea here is we always want to build the fastest prototype that we can, and see whether that works, take it out to market, put it in the wild in that sense. And some of it may not even be working software, right? It's literally just using Marvel app or something like that, or Figma. And then you realize that, oh my gosh, we know what we initially did the discovery, and when we validated, it's totally different, right? That literally throws your entire project haywire, because now even your objectives and your outcomes are no longer the same. So how does PMO deal with that?
Well, the first thing is you have to find it out through discovery, right?
Yes, correct.
You should not find it out late in the process when it's already getting ready to launch, right? You have to actually have a certain degree of confidence that what you have validated is going to happen. But at the same time, you're not going to release something that you don't think is worth it, right? And it's already been built or whatever it is. If the problem is there, if we can't rescue the value for the customers, if it doesn't make sense for the business, we cut it in it. And of course, the project delivery manager will have to deal with it, and will have to adjust timelines, adjust everything that is going on with the other teams. But that's just part of life. Then, okay, -1 star for the product manager. Next time. Next time, make sure you validate it properly, and
you get your shit together and do it properly the next time.
And which is also fine, right? We're all prone to failures. My whole team, even when I onboard people, new people, I onboarded 2 in the past 2 weeks. One is still working remotely, and the message is, it's no problem to make mistakes. Just make sure you discover the mistakes as quick as possible, and you fix your own shit, right?
Don't keep repeating the same mistakes, right?
Right. Just learn with it, fix it. Don't bring me more problems, because I'll already have enough once you make the mistake, right? Go fix, learn from it, and let's go. So that's okay. It's totally fine.
Nice. Okay, that's really cool.
Just make sure you don't break something major, right?
Yeah, but well, I mean, if it happens once, then maybe you could still say yeah. So
because you're continuously trying to optimize, right? You're continuously pushing the boundaries, so mistakes are going to happen. No one's perfect. Yeah,
that's true. But thanks for that, because I think it's quite illuminating, because again, like I said, at least from the people I speak to, the communities that I move within, product management is all the rage in that sense, and project management is a little bit more traditional. So to hear your views on how those two functions can marry, I think will be interesting for many people to hear. So that's great. Thank you for that.
Happy to hear.
Yeah. Now, the next part that I want to talk to you about is the product scene in Thailand in general. So you've been in Thailand with Tencent now for like, what, 5 years, you were saying?
5 years, 5.5. Yeah.
Okay. How do you think the product scene in Thailand has sort of changed in the time that you've been there? I mean, this is general of the entire Thai scene.
Right. Well, I see good progress for sure. I remember when we were in the panel in Singapore last year, you mentioned that one interesting thing about foreigners coming into the region is that people are bringing in new techniques and all that. And I never forgot what you talked about.
Wow.
And I think that is absolutely true. I don't put myself so much into it, but I see like lots of other foreigners coming in. I see like a lot of people coming in to Agoda, for example, which is huge. It's loads of product managers. I see people coming into True Corporation, True Digital. I see some other companies as well. And that's very, very positive because product management all over the world is looking for Silicon Valley and Europe, certain spots in those places, and then it's growing from there, right? And started expanding from there. So the more people from those places that go into other countries, the better it is for the whole world, right? We will have better products being built everywhere, and once those techniques start getting expanding, that's great. So that's something that I have also seen in Thailand. I definitely have seen more people interested in product management. I have seen more product managers, leveling up their games. That's very interesting.
Do you also see a bigger uptake in product roles within the Thai startup scene as well? Because I would say that Tencent, you can't consider them startup anymore. Same for the True Corporation. They're huge. What about the startup scene in Thailand? Do you see that they're also moving that way?
Yes, I definitely see them moving their way. I think what startups normally do is they look for the latest and greatest things in the world to bootstrap their business, right? So I think they absolutely are the ones looking for modern product management practices, and I see them trying to implement that more and more. The difference is startups normally don't have the bandwidth to bring in people outside, right?
Yes.
So they still rely on people learning things locally. They still rely on people learning by themselves. The great thing about digital products is now that we have fantastic internet products, right? That all the knowledge is out there. So basically, anyone can learn the craft online and hopefully have a chance to apply that in the real world and keep on learning and keep on learning. So I definitely see that movement happen.
Okay, nice. For viewers and listeners, the reason, if you're thinking why I'm suddenly going off on a slight tangent to Thailand, it's because Renato is actually the co-founder of Product Tank Bangkok. So he would be the right person to ask this question. So it's not something that just came out of the top of my head. Okay, so I want to go to another. Again, you might seem to be off on a little tangent, but this is something that I think is critical, especially for a lot of people who are wondering. And I've personally had this question asked to me a few times. And so how important do you think is it for a product manager to have an MBA? Because you obviously have one. You've obviously taught in courses that for MBAs as well, and you're a product leader. So how important do you think that is?
I think any form of education is good, right? Any form of education is important. Some people I would say some people hiring give more importance to degrees, give more importance to MBAs or PhDs or whatever it is. Some people don't. I tend to be more of the latter. Not that I don't give importance. It's interesting. It's important that people are searching for knowledge and they are studying and they're taking up formal education. It's extremely important. But education is nothing without attitude. Education is nothing if you don't take that education and you use that for something extremely useful, right? So for me, attitude has a very, very strong value when I'm hiring people, and especially product, right? Because if you don't have the attitude to stand up and speak up, if you don't have the attitude to go and figure things out by yourself instead of just waiting for things, it doesn't matter what degree you have, you're not going to get things done, right? And especially not the right things done. So how important is an MBA? Well, depending on the company you're going for, depending on the career path you're going for, it might be more important than another path. It could be that if it is for you import, and then go ahead and do it. Absolutely, go and do it. I have one team member that left my team at the end of last year to go and do her MBA, and it hurt me because she was great, and I was very hurtful to see her go. But at the same time, I was extremely happy and helping her to as much as I could to get her to go and have the opportunity, because that was something that was important for her. So it depends from person to person who is seeking for that. It depends who is hiring. It depends on the company. It depends on the number of factors.
Okay. So now let me push the envelope a little bit then. So if you are a recent graduate, you've just gotten your degree, for example, and you're thinking, should I go find a job in order for me to get into that product role? Or should I go take my MBA so that, I'm better qualified to get into the product role? For you, and again, this won't apply to everyone, but personally for you, which would you think would be a better move?
I would go for a third option.
Oh, okay. And that is to study and take and work at the same time?
Well, no, I would first do all available top-notch product courses online. Research a lot. Follow people like Marty Kagan, for example. Dissect everything he's talking about. Study cases. Do online courses at Coursera, at Udemy, at everywhere. Consume that for a while, and then go look for a product job. That would be my recommendation, because when you're sitting in front of a product hirer, you would at least be speaking the same language. You would at least show that you know at least the basics. You know a whole bunch of things that you would be eager to implement, that you would be eager to get your hands on. And that's everything that, for me, as a hirer, I would be looking for. Like, okay, do you know the basics? What do you want to do with it? And do you have the right mindset and attitude towards it? Would you be resilient? Because most of the time, it's like, it's a hard job. It's not an easy one, right? So then after getting that initial experience, this person then should consider whether an MBA makes sense or not. And in most cases, probably it would still make sense, right? As a career move, depending on the career that this person would like to follow. But that would be my recommendation. So the third option.
Okay, so I promise I'm gonna push this one last time, and then we'll move on. So
I'm all yours.
Like you said, as a hirer, if let's say there was a candidate who had an MBA but hasn't had hands-on experience in that sense, or I won't say hands-on, not official product experience, but has taken a few stabs at trying something out on their own, trying to fix a problem and things like that, versus someone who doesn't have or someone who has an MBA but hasn't tried it yet. In your opinion, which is more valuable to you as a hirer?
It's very difficult to compare these now, because these people are not in front, right? But what I would look for into both of them is absolutely the attitude of getting their asses off the chair and just figuring it out. I think that's the most important, and that's what I love about the job that we have as product people. Is routine is very rare, because you're always looking to find something new. Have always been a very curious kid. Have always been searching for new things, searching for different stuff. I'm someone, for example, who doesn't like to listen to the same music for some time. I'm always looking for something new. Playing as a DJ in the past, that was my passion. Looking for something new, but it's an addiction, and I think for us in product, it's pretty much that, right? Because we're always looking not for the latest and greatest and big new thing that we want to build, but the next optimization that we need to do. We're always asking, okay, this is working like this. Can I make it work better? Can I actually push the boundary here a little bit? What if I do this? What if I do that? And if you have someone that doesn't have that sort of attitude, that is someone that, there's nothing wrong with someone not having this kind of attitude, but it's someone that is more passive, someone that is contempt with what they have, then it will be difficult to fit into a role like this. So MBA or non-MBA, experience or non-experience, I think the attitude will make a much bigger difference in this case.
Very nicely said. That's spoken like a true product person. I'm impressed. I didn't manage to pin you down, and you managed to get out of it very nicely. Brilliant. Yeah, but what you sorry?
Don't make me cry.
Okay, but what you mentioned at the last part does make a nice segue into the next section, which was, you said as a DJ, you're always looking for, new music, like old music in that sense. And so this is the part where you can tell the listeners and the viewers about the song that you chose, that you wanted to recommend to the listeners and the viewers of the Product Uncensored show.
Sure. Almost by accident, I think that song fits a lot into who I am and the work we do. The song is called Insatiable. I love that song because...
And it's by the artist, it's called Mo Horizon.
Mo Horizon, yes. Mo Horizons is a duo, is an electronic music duo from, I think, Hanover, Germany. They are amazing guys, and they produce some amazing down-tempo, trip-hop, new funk style of music. I have always been a big funk fan, traditional funk fan. I had always been like a traditional 60s and 70s rock and roll fan, funk, then coming on top of it as well. And suddenly one day I find myself at a party at an island in Thailand with electronic music, and I'm like, I hate electronic music. What am I doing here? But then I started recognizing, well, this is not as bad as the other one. Whoa, I didn't know there were differences in electronic music. And then I see this little thing. Let me research a little bit, and I go through the rabbit hole, and I see this universe of different electronic music genres. And that just blew my mind, because as a big music fan my whole life, I had never seen this whole underground scene that was going on. Beautiful. So Mo Horizons come from that sort of experience, from that sort of research. And when you asked me for a song, this past weekend I was listening to a lot of funk, and I said, well, yeah, that would be a good song to recommend. It has a lot to do with me. It's forward. It's pushing some of the boundaries. It's high tempo. It's funky. It's groovy. It's very well constructed. And then the lyrics, I didn't realize they are for us, product people. I can't get enough. I can't get enough. Right? Yeah, I always have to optimize. I can't get enough of what we're getting right now. So where can we look for it? So I thought it was a good fit.
Very nice. Yeah, I have to say that the when you gave me the song, I was like, oh, Mo Horizons. I wonder what kind of music. And I was like, oh wow. And I was telling you a little bit earlier that so I like new jazz. And that was because I've been going for some jazz festivals where they were playing not just all the more traditional jazz, but they were fusing it. And then after, when you told me that, oh, this is actually new funk, and I actually did more research, that, oh, actually new funk has its roots in new jazz, which then came from jazz. And it's so now I have a little bit more context into the kind of music that I've been enjoying for a while as well. So that's really, really great. Nice. Yeah, so for you guys who want to go check it out, the link will be on top somewhere. It probably would have shown up when he started talking about it. But yeah, it'll be there, and it'll also be at the end credits as well. Go take a listen and see whether that suits your product palette. And yeah, that'll be great. So thank you so much, Renato. I know I've taken a little bit more time than I should have, but thank you for bearing with me and very candidly answering all my questions as well, and taking time off to just be on this show. Thank you so much.
Hey man, I really, really appreciate I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. I appreciate the fact that we're separating sometimes for the both of us to talk a little more. I think it was the longest conversation we ever had. I think in Singapore last year we had some, but they were probably shorter. So I really, really appreciate. Thanks for the opportunity. Whatever you need, just let me know. And for the listeners or watchers of this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give your like. And yeah, that's it. Much success with your show.
Oh, spoken like a true guru in the podcast field. Thank you so much, Renato.
Well, I'm more used to be on your side rather than on this side, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
that's interesting. Yeah. So thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. Cool.
All right.
Really nice.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Renato Silva, the head of product and regional PMO at Tencent Thailand. Absolute pleasure talking to him, and it's great that he's our first guest who's based out of Thailand. Because as you guys know, this is something that I really want to do, which is to really explore the product scene, starting with Southeast Asia. So if you've enjoyed today's show on YouTube, as he has mentioned it so nicely, like, subscribe, and if you're on a podcast, download and follow. And if you want to know more about Product Uncensored, please visit our website at www.productuncensored.com. We're going to end this very exciting show today, and we'll be back next time for another exciting and special episode. So until then, stay safe and keep rocking.